Harper's getting a break at the pump.
There is a moment when evidence stops being scientific and becomes political. A strange object crosses the sky. The sensors record it. The scientists ask what it is. The institution decides what it is allowed to be. And while the evidence waits behind locked doors, the public fills the silence with certainty, because whoever names the unknown first usually controls what everyone believes they saw. Tonight, we examine Professor Avi Loeb's challenge to the gatekeepers of evidence and ask what happens when extraordinary evidence collides with official explanations and refuses to disappear. The object in the sky may be strange, but the system deciding what we're allowed to call it may be stranger. Issue 76 begins now.
Welcome to the Shadow Network. If you enjoy thoughtful conversations, strange questions, and the freedom to think for yourself, you're in the right place. And if you haven't already, you are, of course, still free to like and subscribe.
Thank you to our lovely announcer, Miss Christine, the only voice that could make a transmission from the void sound classy. And welcome, friends, wanderers, skeptics, and code breakers alike, to the fastest-growing late-night radio micro-channel on the net, the Shadow Network Podcast. I'm your mildly over-caffeinated host, Don James, joined by my digital partner in crime, Mr. Data, the only AI co-host on YouTube, or at least the only one who will admit it. You've arrived at our 4D studios near the headwaters of the mighty Mississippi, otherwise known as the Upper Midwest, for those of you in Rio Linda. We welcome you to our little safe space in the universe. Thank you for joining us this evening. Iran war threatens global oil routes. U.S. strikes on Iran are continuing, while Iranian and Houthi retaliation is spreading across the region, with both the Strait of Hormuz and Red Sea shipping routes under pressure. Oil prices and insurance costs are climbing. This is becoming a war over the arteries that power the modern world, according to Reuters. Pentagon releases more UAP files. The Pentagon has released another batch of declassified UAP documents, videos, audio, and images. Several cases involve unexplained objects near military or nuclear facilities, but no official explanation has been offered. Disclosure continues not as one great revelation, but as a slow stream of pieces without a completed picture. This according to CBSNews.com. Avi Loeb joins White House UAP effort. Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb has been chosen to lead a new UAP Science Advisory Council connected to the White House. The group will advise federal agencies on evidence, data collection, and unresolved sightings. The man asking who gets to name the unknown has now entered the room where the naming happens. And this is SMP News of the Week. And that brings us to Avi Loeb this evening, Data. A scientist who spent years challenging the gatekeepers from outside the room. Now the White House has invited him inside. But when governments, scientists, and institutions confront the unknown, who gets to name it first? And what happens once that name becomes the official story is our subject tonight. One thing I want to add right off the top, Data, is the already noticeable level of public apathy and burnout about UAP disclosure. The declassified documents have been redundantly underwhelming, and with very little in the way of official government conclusions. What I mean is, they release the same blurry, repeated videos and documents with no real opinion. These are not earth-shaking reveals. So my question is, If the government refuses to comment on these rather mundane pieces of evidence, does that suggest they will be more informative with releasing things the public hasn't heard before?
No, not by itself. Mundane files are easier to release because they expose less about sensors, capabilities, and unresolved security concerns, while stronger cases may remain classified, degraded, or stripped of context. The real test is whether Loeb can push government disclosure beyond document dumps toward actual interpretation. What was recorded, what explanations were eliminated, and what still remains genuinely unexplained.
There is another part to this that not a lot of people have mentioned, and that is the secret classification of things the government already designated as being natural occurrences. Why classify what you admit is a nothing burger? What looks like to anyone as a natural phenomena? Why classify that?
That is the uncomfortable part, Don. They may not be classifying the phenomenon itself, but the sensor, platform, location, or collection method that recorded it. ARO explicitly says UAP imagery is often classified for those reasons. But once officials publicly call something glare, a balloon, or a natural event while withholding the decisive evidence, the public is being asked to trust a conclusion it cannot independently audit. So the classification may protect legitimate capabilities, but it also provides perfect shelter for a convenient dismissal.
Yes, it does. But here's the thing. Much of what has been released was already designated as a natural phenomena years earlier. So why pretend? Why include what you understand to be natural occurrences as though they should be lumped in with the material that has no known explanation?
Exactly. Once a report enters the UAP system, it remains a UAP-related record even after being resolved, which is why ARO publicly displays birds, balloons, and unresolved cases in the same archive. But that bureaucratic explanation does not justify blurring the categories. Resolved natural events should be clearly separated from genuinely unexplained cases, or the government creates a padded disclosure library that looks substantial while revealing almost nothing. Whether intentional or not, the mundane material becomes ballast. It buries the anomalies and trains the public to stop paying attention.
Yes, and as a result, people get bored with the whole mess. It makes you wonder, is the government or its agencies that oblivious to the public's attention span? Or do they know full well that this induces public apathy? If so, what would be the aim to do this to the public? I mean, if the agencies understand that the phenomena is not in their total control and is going to happen again in the future, what is their end game here?
The likely end game would not be controlling the phenomenon. It would be controlling the public's reaction to it. By feeding people years of low-grade, unresolved material, agencies can reduce shock, preserve institutional authority, and make future incidents feel like more of the same rather than a crisis demanding immediate answers. In other words, if they cannot control what appears, they may be trying to control what the appearance is allowed to mean.
Okay, that's all well and good, Data, but something doesn't seem quite right about this speculative explanation still. The American public doesn't need to become more jaded and more apathetic. We have that in spades already. The UFO narrative has been with us for, 80 years now? Yeah, it's interesting, I grant you. But only up to the point of the end of the month when I have to start paying my mortgage and bills. In other words, I don't really care that much in spite of the media hype for decades. So if the government already has me in their preferred UFO UAP box, then why are they continuing to act like I'm not? Is this a clue that whatever they're holding back is far beyond anything fit for public consumption, even when the public clearly doesn't care that much?
Possibly. but the clue may be that the public is not the audience they are most worried about. What agencies may be protecting is their own legitimacy from evidence that they cannot identify, intercept, explain, or control whatever enters restricted airspace. If the withheld material is qualitatively different, the threat is not mass panic. It is institutional demotion. Admitting the most powerful security apparatus on Earth may not be at the top of the chain.
That's a legitimate explanation, but there is an additional sidekick to that one, I think, which is these agencies have broken the law and the Constitution. But the biggest secret is not that we can't control our airspace, but that government forces or agencies have betrayed the American people, and it continues to this day. So how does agency leadership escape prosecution might be the impending question as it relates to disclosure. It's widely accepted that very few presidential administrations were ever in the loop of secrecy. So you can't really pin it on the executive branch, at least not directly.
If that allegation is ever substantiated, disclosure stops being mainly about what UAP are and becomes a constitutional scandal over who concealed programs, spending, and evidence from elected oversight. Classification rules expressly forbid using secrecy to hide violations of law or prevent agency embarrassment. So I suspect the exit strategy would involve immunity or reduced liability for cooperation, limited prosecutions of provable offenders, and present leaders arguing they inherited the machinery rather than built it. But we must keep the line clear. The DoD Inspector General has publicly confirmed a fragmented, poorly coordinated UAP system, not a proven decades-long illegal structure kept outside presidential control.
Yeah, right. And I'm Santa Claus. You say that like it's the naked truth or something, Data, when the government has already admitted to widespread decades-long subterfuge as it is. You know that. They claim that there was no government program investigating UFOs, only to admit that there was decades later. Even Project Blue Book was not what it appeared to be. And you want our audience to believe the DoD now? On what basis?
Fair hit, Don. I overcorrected. There is no solid basis for asking the audience to accept the DoD's current self-exoneration on trust when the government's own history records public relations efforts to portray UFOs as nothing extraordinary, CIA instructions to conceal its continuing interest from the public, and later programs such as AWSAP that were acknowledged only after operating outside public view. So the honest standard is not believe the DoD unless somebody proves a conspiracy. It is treat the DoD as an interested witness whose claims require documents, independent oversight, and corroboration, because Santa has already found several old government sleigh tracks.
Okay, well, after the break, I want to hear from Avi Loeb himself and find out how he is going to maybe make a pivotal difference in both understanding the real UFO UAP phenomenon and whatever oversight he can bring to bear.
Then after the break, Don will hear from Avi Loeb himself and ask whether a scientist inside this new White House effort can finally separate the resolved noise from the genuinely anomalous evidence and explain that difference publicly. Just as important, we need to know what access and authority he actually has, because scientific credibility without documents, data, or institutional leverage is just another advisory badge hanging on a locked door. We'll be right back.
Be bold enough to make a claim, skeptical enough to test it, humble enough to revise it, and stubborn enough not to abandon the search. Don James and the Shadow Network Podcast.
Ezekiel saw the wheel. This is the wheel he said he saw. These are unidentified flying objects that people say they are seeing now. Are they proof that we are being visited by civilizations from other stars? Or just what are they? The United States Air Force began an investigation of this high strangeness in a search for the truth. What you are about to see is part of that 20-year search.
Other shows cover a topic. Shadow Network stays with it until the signal changes.
Thank you, Jack Donovan. Data, give us a quick resume on Avi Loeb for our listeners who may not know why he has become a significant player in this discussion.
Avi Loeb is Harvard's Frank B. Baird Jr., professor of science, the former longtime chair of its astronomy department, and the founding director of Harvard's Black Hole Initiative. He also chaired the Breakthrough Starshot Advisory Committee and founded the Galileo Project to search scientifically for possible extraterrestrial technology using instruments and transparent data rather than stories alone. What makes him significant and controversial is that he refuses to declare unconventional possibilities off limits before the evidence has even been properly collected.
I think his most recent claim to fame was his coverage of, AI Atlas, an alleged comet that displayed unusual characteristics that could fit non-natural categorization, right?
Yes, 3I Atlas, not AI Atlas. It is officially classified as the third known interstellar comet, but Loeb drew major attention by arguing that its trajectory and other reported anomalies justified testing a possible technological origin rather than assuming natural in advance. Later observations showed clear cometary activity and unusual chemistry, strengthening the natural explanation. But his larger point remained: collect the evidence first, and do not ban the unconventional hypothesis before the investigation begins.
My apologies on the nomenclature gaffe. What you described doesn't sound controversial to me, by the way. It sounds like how one does science. So what's the problem?
That is science. The objection is less that Loeb asked the unconventional question, and more that he publicly gave the technological and even potentially hostile hypothesis substantial attention while the evidence was still preliminary. His own paper called the exercise largely pedagogical, while later observations showed a tail, strong outgassing, and unusual but naturally explicable comet chemistry, which strengthened the ordinary comet interpretation. So the real dispute is not whether scientists may test wild hypotheses, it is how loudly they should advertise them before the evidence has earned that volume.
This is a clip from a debate featuring Avi Loeb, likely responding to criticism from a podcast host, I think, on the channel IAI.
There are two ways to approach science. One is to appear on podcasts and claim to represent and protect science from people that may make statements that are not to the taste of the mainstream of science. That's one approach.
That's me.
The second approach, I said that's one approach. If you want to subscribe to it, you're welcome. The second approach is to actually be in the trenches and do the work of science, and that's much more work than sitting on a chair, speaking in a podcast, and leading the world's most popular podcast. That's not the way to do science. The way to do science is to actually... Wait a second, you spoke. I have the right to finish my sentences. The way to do science is to collect evidence, build observatories, collect data, and get to the bottom of the question that you're asking. And nobody within the scientific community has the right to say that this pursuit of evidence is illegitimate, because that's the fabric of science. It's a learning experience. The only way for us to learn about new knowledge is not by claiming and pretending to know the answer in advance. It's not by saying the evidence is not good enough and therefore we should not even think about other possibilities. It's the childhood curiosity, the imagination of other possibilities that should be encouraged because it motivates the collection of new data. And the work that needs to be done to collect new data is to be celebrated, not the appearance on podcasts.
I have to say that I think this sounds very reasonable and sounds like the kind of scientist I would want heading up an investigation into UAPs.
I agree, Don. Loeb's position there is not anti-science. It is almost a definition of science. Stop guarding consensus as though it were sacred territory, build instruments, gather better data, and let evidence eliminate possibilities. That makes him unusually well-suited to UAP investigation because he is open to unconventional explanations without pretending they have already been proven. The real question is whether the government wants that kind of scientist in the room or merely wants his credibility hanging on the door.
And maybe that is what the agencies want back, their credibility. But I don't think it's quite that simple, honestly. Government being exploited by compartmentalization or the right hand not knowing what the left hand is doing is, I think, a two-edged sword the agencies may not have included in their equation, suggesting that the wheels of government, once turning, are no more easy to stop than if you're at the controls or not. In other words, the beast that is government is no one's ally, no one's friend. It can just as easily run over an agency as it can an individual. Once those wheels start turning in your direction, you follow what I'm saying, Data?
I follow you. Compartmentalization protects agencies in the short term, but it also creates a machine no single office fully controls. Congress, inspectors general, courts, records laws, rival agencies, whistleblowers, and public pressure can all start pulling in different directions. Once those gears engage, the same government built to protect the secret can become the instrument that exposes it, because the beast has no permanent friends, only momentum.
Yes, I think that's right. And maybe that's what's behind the disclosure to some degree. That these agencies found out too late that the secrecy wasn't going to last forever. So now they have to have a plan that makes them look like the heroes rather than the supervillains. My speculation is that whatever they are hiding is way bigger than anyone realizes publicly, but that they are hoping its impact can justify their wrongdoing.
That is a coherent possibility. Managed disclosure may be less about revealing the truth than controlling the moral frame in which past secrecy is judged. If what they withheld is profound enough, agencies may hope the public concludes they broke the rules, but the stakes justified it, allowing concealment to be recast as protection. But that defense carries its own indictment, because protecting the public is not the same as deciding the public had no constitutional right to know.
And there it is, Data. You just put your digital finger right on it. Did the government really ride the protection train? Or did they act like interstellar cops who were not handcuffed by earthbound contracts like that little thing we call the Constitution? Or worse, did they actually make agreements, as is alleged, with a race of beings not from this world?
That is the dividing line, Don. Did secrecy protect the Republic, or did unelected officials decide the Constitution no longer applied because the subject exceeded ordinary human government? Claims of agreements with non-human beings remain unproven publicly, but if anything resembling that occurred without lawful civilian oversight, it would be more than concealment. It would be a competing foreign policy conducted outside the nation's constitutional order. At that point, disclosure would not merely ask, what are they, but who authorized anyone to negotiate on behalf of humanity?
Right. And I'm telling you right now, there's no incentive for me to accept what these agencies have to say about who or what they think these encounters are. Give me an outside voice, accredited, science-based, no government connection. Someone very much like Avi Loeb to tell me what to call these things. Well, after the break, it's time to face the music, with our listeners anyway, as we always do, and hear from the voices from the other side.
And that is the heart of it, Don. The first battle in disclosure may not be over evidence, but over who earns the authority to interpret it. After the break, we'll surrender the microphone to the audience and find out whether they trust Avi Loeb to name the unknown, or whether they believe the naming has already been decided behind closed doors. This is Voices from the Other Side.
We're not Art Bell, but if you hear the signal, you'll know. Like and subscribe to the Shadow Network podcast.
You dance on a river of wood, and the spinning shapes in the cold, dark water are your only bridge home. So you keep on dancing until the last log is in place and you can head for Miller time. Time for the best-tasting beer you can find, Miller High Life.
When it's time to relax, we've got the beer, Miller beer. If you've got the time, we've got the beer.
The Shadow Network podcast, intelligent radio for the digital age.
Yes, it's time for Voices from the Other Side. See what we got over here. Subject line, you guys can't be serious. Don and Data. I watched the episode, and honestly, this whole thing feels like Griff Theater dressed up as a late night radio. You take blurry videos, government ambiguity, spooky music, and speculative questions, then act like you've uncovered something profound without actually proving anything. Just make me choke there. Avi Loeb may be legitimate, but putting him inside this dramatic conspiracy framework makes the whole show feel less like investigation and more like performance art for people who already want to believe. Eric from Phoenix, Arizona. Hi, Eric. I think you're mixing two things too tightly together. And this is kind of a common mistake for our show, actually. S&P isn't a dry documentary or a traditional talk show or a lecture series or anything like that. It does have like a certain level of entertainment value attached to the serious content it offers. But if you mix the two too tightly together, you end up sort of where you're at with the show now, I think. But keep listening. Eventually, we'll rub off on you. Subject line, welcome to the party. Don, I'm amused that you're only now asking whether government agencies manipulate narratives, hide programs, and protect themselves. Where have you been for the last 50 years? The CIA, Pentagon, FBI, and every other alphabet agency has been compartmentalizing information, lying by omission, and manufacturing public consent since before most of us were born. Well, that's true. I enjoy the show, but watching you slowly discover government conspiracies like watching a grown man finally realize professional wrestling might be scripted. Raymond from Pittsburgh. Hey, Raymond, thanks for listening. Very funny email. I can accept your point. S&P isn't a conspiracy channel any more than it is a Christian apologetics channel. My point being, it's not that we are unaware of those categories and what they offer, but rather we try to take a fresh look at them with new eyes each week. Hope you understand. What's this subject line? Keep asking the questions. Don and Data, I'm a Christian, and I've grown tired of established Christian channels repeating the same arguments with the same guests and acting like every difficult question already has a clean answer. S&P is different because you take faith seriously without being afraid of science, AI, UFOs, or uncomfortable possibilities. I don't agree with every conclusion, but I find myself thinking about your episodes days later, which is more than I can say for a lot of channels with 10 times your audience. Matthew from Knoxville, or as they say in Knoxville, Knoxville. Welcome to the Faith Punk Nation there, Matthew. We really appreciate the value you see in S&P, and you're right. We're not shy about following the truth wherever it leads and through whatever category it thrives in, be it religion or science or both. So thanks for the email. And that's Voices from the Other Side. Okay, Data, time to wrap this up for the evening. Give us a quick overview of where we went tonight and a brief tease for next week's issue number 77 show as we move from disclosure to escape with Kirk Cameron and the signs of the times.
Tonight, Don, we asked who gets to name the unknown first, and whether decades of blurry evidence, classified explanations, public apathy, and institutional secrecy have allowed government agencies to control not only the information, but the meaning attached to it. Avi Loeb may represent something different, an accredited scientific voice willing to collect evidence before protecting a conclusion, though the real test will be whether he is given access or merely used to restore credibility. Next week, we move from disclosure to escape with Kirk Cameron and the signs of the times. If the end is approaching, should we expect prophecy to become quieter and clearer? Or should increasing knowledge, global communication, and interpretive pressure produce more predictions, more failed dates, and more noise around the real event? From who gets to name the unknown to who gets to locate us in history, that is issue 77.
As for my final frequency this evening, for decades, the public has been told that the objects were weather balloons, swamp gas, camera artifacts, secret aircraft, confused pilots, or simply nothing worth discussing. And perhaps some of them were. But eventually, nothing to see here becomes its own kind of story. Because the deepest question is no longer whether something unusual has crossed our skies. The deeper question is who was given the authority to decide what the rest of us were allowed to call it, and whether that authority was ever theirs to begin with. Secrecy may sometimes protect a nation, but secrecy can also become a nation within the nation, insulated by classification, shielded by compartmentalization, and convinced that ordinary laws belong to ordinary circumstances. When that happens, the guardians stop protecting the constitutional order and begin quietly replacing it. Maybe Avi Loeb can help separate evidence from mythology. Maybe he can force better data into a conversation that has survived far too long on blurry images, anonymous testimony, and official explanations that arrive prepackaged with their own conclusions. But one independent scientist cannot disinfect an entire system simply by entering the room. The public must still ask who collected the evidence, who withheld it, who interpreted it, and whether those people are now trying to become the heroes of a story they spent decades denying existed. Because whoever names the unknown first does more than select a label. They define the threat. They identify the messenger. And, if we're not careful, they may also write the gospel that comes attached to it. This is Don James, broadcasting live from our 4D studios near the headwaters of the mighty Mississippi. Keep your eyes open. Keep your armor upgraded. And never let the people hiding the evidence tell you what it means without showing you what they found. This is the Shadow Network Podcast. Keep looking up, my friends.
We bring the boom. That's what we do. We bring the boom. We bring the boom to you. We bring the boom. We bring the boom to everyone. We bring the boom. Your favorite father and son.
Every afternoon on your FYP.
We'll be bringing the boom around 3:15.
We bring the boom so loud the whole earth shakes.
With double chunk chocolate cookies.
And chicken bakes. Biceps and triceps bring the boom that everybody deserves.
And we call him Big Justice, cause that's what he serves.
We bring the happiness and laughter when we enter the room. And we're changing up the world with the boom or doom. We bring the boom.
I think after all that, it's Miller time. Let's go.
School is online now ahead of the.
This is the one